For your children's education can be a huge task, and it can even be a bit confusing while you navigate how RESPs work. Jim Yee is a financial educator, founder of retirehappy.ca. He's here to break down the basics when it comes to understanding educational savings. Nice to have you on our show again, Jim.
Nice to be back. Thanks for having me.
This time talking RESPs. There's two different types out there, and I don't think people know. What are they?
Well, there's one's is sort of called a pooled or group RESP plan, and the other one's more of a self-directed approach. So the pooled ones are where you sort of own units and you become part of a bigger pool, and the self-directed ones are where you own individual accounts and you have more control over your investment options and contribution amounts and withdrawals. So the pooled plans, the one thing you have to be careful of is sometimes the small print and the fees and the restrictions. I've heard lots of people who said, you know, I've been putting in $50 a month and now I want to stop, and then there's a penalty to stopping and whatnot. So my preference personally is the self-directed approach. It's what I have for my kids, and gives me a lot more freedom.
Okay.
Yeah.
And those are through banks, I understand?
Yeah, you can get through banks or you know, most financial advisors will set up these RESPs. The pooled ones are often salespeople that work for the larger company, like the Heritage RESP and things like that. So,
okay, now we know the different types. Let's talk about the details. It's just so convoluted. But the limits to contributions, number of RESPs per beneficiary. Let's go over that.
Well, you can have as many RESPs as you want, but it's how much money you put in as an aggregate. So the rules can be pretty complicated, but let's simplify this. You can put in $2,500 a year per child. And the reason for that number is the government will give you what's called the Canada Education Savings Grant, right, which is 20% of the $2,500 to a maximum of $500 a year. So generally speaking, yeah, that's how much you can put in. $2,500 a year per child.
Okay, and I think that's the good motivating factor, is that grant from the federal government.
Absolutely. And one thing to mention too is a lot of people don't maximize their RESP contributions. So if you haven't maximized them every year, the good news is you can catch up. And so, yeah, but you can only catch up sort of 1 year at a time. Okay. So, for example, if you had a child last year and you didn't put contributions in last year, you could put in $2,500 this year with an additional catch-up of the $2,500 from last year, and the government will actually put in $1,000 for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
What if you have more than one child? What are your options there?
So there's two kinds of accounts. There's an individual account and a family account. And to be very honest, there's very little difference between the two, except for maybe administration and paperwork. So, for example, I have 4 kids. I could easily open up 4 individual accounts. But I choose to hold one family account with all 4 kids listed on, and I can still, you know, contribute just $100 for one child, or, you know, and not contribute for another. But so the mechanics of the contributions and the rules and the withdrawals and the grants, they're all the same no matter whether you have an individual account or a family account. The only difference is I get one statement, which I like, rather than 4 statements.
Save trees.
Yeah, and sometimes some institutions will charge fees per account, so it's easier to just have the one account.
Okay.
So.
There are age restrictions with RESPs like RRSPs.
Yeah, so the only thing you have to be careful of is when your kids are 15, 16, and 17. So if the children haven't, if you've never contributed to an RESP before, then they can't get the grant at the age of 16 and 17. If they have contributed in the past, they can continue to contribute for the age of 16 and 17. I think this was a bigger issue early on when the RESPs first started, but now people tend to buy RESPs when the kids are at a much younger age.
Younger age, yeah. And that is the key, starting young, I assume.
Absolutely.
What about withdrawals for RESPs? What are the rules there when you're ready to pull out?
Yeah, so if we go to the other end of the spectrum, your kids are now grown up, going to post-secondary education. The thing you have to watch for is there's in the plan, when you look at all the money that's in the plan, there's 2 types of money. One is what we call contributions. So that's the $2,500 that was put in. The other amount is what I call grants and growth. So it would include the government grant as well as any growth on the entire plan. So when you take out the contribution money, the nice thing about that is there's no restrictions to take it out. It's not taxable, and you have lots of freedom there.
It's still your money.
It's your money. You never got a tax deduction on the way in, so you're free to take that out whenever you want. But the other amount, the growth and the grant money, there's some restrictions on that, and it is taxable, but it's taxable to the student. It's not taxable to the parent or the grandparent that might have put it in. And generally that's okay because the student usually isn't working.
Not making any money yet.
So they're allowed to take in about $11,474 without having to pay any tax at all. So as long as you watch that amount, yeah.
Now, what if after all of this, your child says, "Nah, I don't want to go to post-secondary after all"?
You shoot him. No, no. So there's a few options there. Number one, I always say don't panic because the RESP can stay in place for 36 years. So just because they don't want to go to school right away doesn't mean
convince them.
you still have a chance, right? So don't panic. You can just sort of leave it and wait and see if something's going to happen. The second option that you have is that you can transfer RESP money between siblings. So in the case of having 4 kids, I have a greater chance that at least one of them will go to school. But there is a grant limit per child to a maximum of $7,200 over a lifetime. So if the transfer amount exceeds that, then some of the grant money might have to go back to the government.
Okay,
Yeah.
you really laid things out very well. I wish we had more time, but bottom line, spend a lot of time researching and talk to your financial advisor.
Or talk to your financial advisor and get some help, absolutely.
Well, you've helped us. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Always great to have you here, Jim. Jim Yee is a financial educator and founder of RetireHappy.ca.